Hey there, how's it going? I hope you're doing great. I'm your storyteller and I'm here to take you deep into some chilling horror tales, straight from the dark side of roommates. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the channel and smash that like button. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now, so drop it in the comments. When you're ready, find a comfortable spot, dim the lights, relax. And let's step into the shadows together. The rain had been falling all afternoon in Seattle, turning the sidewalks slick and the sky into a sheet of dull gray. At the edge of the city, in a quiet neighborhood where streetlights glowed dim in the fog, two teenage girls sat in a dimly lit bedroom, talking about things they weren't supposed to believe in. Lily had her knees pulled up to her chest, her long brown hair hanging over her face, while Hannah sat cross-legged across from her, holding a half-empty soda can in one hand. "You've heard about it, right?" Hannah asked, lowering her voice like she was afraid someone outside the room might hear. "Heard about what?" Lily said without looking up. "That tape," Hannah whispered. "The one that kills you in 7 days." Lily gave a short laugh, but it sounded nervous. "Everyone's heard about it. It's just a story people tell." Hannah grinned, leaning closer. "No, I mean for real. They say when you watch it, you get a phone call. Just one sentence. 7 days. And then it happens." Lily's eyes darted toward the window, where rain streaked down the glass. "It's not just a story." Hannah blinked. "What are you talking about?" Lily hesitated for a long moment before speaking again. "I've seen it. Me and my friends, we found this old cabin last weekend at Shelter Mountain Inn. We were bored, so we messed around with the VCR there. There was this tape, no label, just black. We watched it." Hannah laughed, but it didn't come out right. "And what happened? Did you get your phone call?" Lily looked away. "Yeah." The way she said it made Hannah's smile fade. "Wait, seriously?" Lily nodded slowly. "That was 7 days ago." Hannah rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Lily." Before she could finish, the lights flickered. Hannah's soda can slipped from her hand, spilling cold liquid onto the carpet. Lily's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up without looking at the screen. Her face went pale. "What is it?" Hannah asked, suddenly uneasy. Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "She's here." The phone slipped from Lily's hand, hitting the floor. Hannah heard a low, wet sound from somewhere in the room, like water dripping steadily onto the carpet. Her eyes searched the shadows, and then Lily screamed. The sound cut off abruptly. When Hannah turned, Lily was gone. The window was open, rain blowing in, and the floor where she had been sitting was wet as if someone had dumped a bucket of water there. 1 week later, the smell of flowers and damp soil filled the air inside the small funeral home. Lily's picture stood at the front, surrounded by white lilies. Clara, Lily's aunt, stood in the corner in her black coat, watching the mourners. Clara was a journalist in Seattle, used to chasing down strange stories, but this was family. Lily's mother, her face pale and eyes swollen, came to her and gripped her arm. "Clara, please. Find out what happened to her. They said it was her heart. 17 years old, and they said her heart stopped." Her voice broke. "That's not possible." Clara didn't promise anything, but she knew she would do it. She started by talking to some of Lily's friends. What she heard was worse than she expected. All 3 of the friends who had been with Lily at Shelter Mountain Inn had died, and all at almost the exact same moment Lily did. One drowned in a bathtub with no water in it. Another was found sitting upright in bed, her mouth frozen in a twisted, terrified scream. The third had simply vanished, leaving a trail of wet footprints into the woods that ended at nothing. The pattern was too strange to ignore. Clara drove out to Shelter Mountain Inn. The place was half hidden in the trees, its wood siding dark from years of rain. The owner, a tired-looking man in his 60s, seemed uneasy when she mentioned Lily. "I remember her," he said. "She and her friends stayed in cabin 12. That place, we get strange power outages there sometimes. The TV turns on by itself." Inside cabin 12, the air felt heavy and still. Clara looked around, the old VCR still sat under the dusty TV. She crouched down, opened the cabinet, and there it was, a black VHS tape with no label. She hesitated for a moment, then slid it into the VCR. The images that flickered on the screen made no sense: a lighthouse standing in a field of black water, a man thrashing underwater with a blindfold over his eyes, a pale woman stroking the mane of a dead horse, hundreds of writhing worms crawling out of a wooden box, a dark figure crawling across the floor toward the camera in jerky, unnatural movements. The tape ended abruptly. The phone rang. Clara froze. Slowly, she picked it up. A voice, low and wet, whispered into her ear, 7 days. After the tape ended with that phone call, Clara felt a chill run through her body. She set the phone down and looked around the room, but there was no one there. The air felt heavy and thick, and a strange smell lingered, like wet earth mixed with old water. Clara thought to herself, this isn't normal. This is the same terrifying truth Lily warned about. Even after she got home, the strange events didn't stop. At night, Clara noticed her reflection in the window was a second behind her movements. The TV would turn on by itself, showing flickering, distorted images. Sometimes, puddles of water appeared on the floor, but there were no leaking faucets or pipes. Clara realized she needed help from someone who understood these things. She went to her ex-husband Ethan, a skilled video analyst who could examine the tape technically. Clara told him the entire story and showed him the tape. Ethan watched it carefully, and a serious expression appeared on his face. "This isn't normal, Clara. There's some kind of ancient or psychic power at work here. This isn't just a video, it's something else." Meanwhile, their 8-year-old son Jacob accidentally watched the tape. Jacob had always had strange dreams and could sense things others couldn't, but this time he seemed calm, almost unnervingly so. He told Clara, "Mom, she said you'd come. You can't stop her." Clara didn't fully understand, but she could see both fear and truth in his eyes. Clara and Ethan began a technical investigation of the tape. They noticed the same woman appeared repeatedly, a horse breeder named Margaret Hawthorne, who had committed suicide years ago after several of her horses drowned themselves. Clara realized that Margaret had a dark secret connected to the tape. They decided to travel to Moscow Island, where Margaret had lived. On the ferry, Clara watched in horror as a horse suddenly panicked in its stall, broke free, and jumped into the ocean. The fear of what they were about to uncover only grew. On Moscow Island, Clara spoke to Margaret's widower Thomas. He explained that after Margaret had suffered 4 miscarriages, they adopted a girl named Sophia. Sophia had unusual powers. She could etch images into objects and people's minds, tormenting them mentally. Even when isolated, she continued to haunt her parents and their horses. Ethan visited the psychiatric hospital and found Sophia's records. They contained a disturbing final video in which Sophia said, "They think locking me away will stop it. It's already inside them. It will never stop." Clara and Ethan continued to uncover the truth. They found the loft in the Hawthorne barn where Sophia had been isolated. The walls were covered with hundreds of drawings, all of the same leafless tree Clara had seen before at Shelter Mountain Inn. Back at Shelter Mountain Inn, they removed the floorboards and discovered a hidden well. When Clara looked inside, she saw a terrifying vision, Margaret pushing Sophia into the water. Sophia survived for 7 days, clawing at the walls, before finally succumbing. Clara pulled Sophia's remains from the well, thinking the curse was over. But Jacob suddenly warned, "Mom, helping her was a mistake." At that moment, Ethan died in his apartment. Water dripped from the TV, and Sophia's ghost crawled out and killed him. Clara realized the curse would never truly end. She had only survived because she made a copy of the tape for Ethan. Now she understood, the only way to survive was to make a copy of the tape and pass it on to someone else. At the end, Clara made a new copy and left it at a stranger's doorstep. As she walked away, she heard the same chilling whisper behind her, 7 days. Meanwhile, reports of strange deaths and disappearances began to appear across the city. People drowned mysteriously, cars crashed without explanation, and several residents vanished. Clara understood that this was all the curse spreading through Sophia's ghost. Clara and Jacob devised a plan to contain Sophia's power. They secured the copied tape and set a trap in the old Hawthorne house loft to confuse her ghost. That night, Sophia's spirit appeared. Her eyes burned with anger and pain, and she floated around the room, screaming. Jacob used his psychic powers to focus her energy. Clara carefully placed the tape into the trap, and as Sophia's ghost moved toward it, Jacob redirected her energy into the tape, containing her power. By morning, the house was quiet. The tape was safely secured, but Clara knew Sophia's ghost would always exist somewhere. She told Jacob, "We must always stay alert. It's not over. We only stopped it for now." Clara and Jacob also understood that the only way to keep Sophia's power contained was to ensure it never fell into the wrong hands. They hid the tape copy and made sure no one would watch it without understanding its danger. But Jacob's eyes were still filled with fear and knowledge. He quietly asked, "Mom, will it ever really end?" Clara only nodded and remained silent. She knew that sometimes the fight wasn't about defeating evil, it was just about surviving. Sophia's power continued to grow. Even though the tape was securely locked away, its influence could be felt around the house and throughout the city. Clara and Jacob noticed people suddenly facing terrifying events in their own homes. Doors would open on their own, shadowy figures would appear in the dark, and sometimes people would fall for no apparent reason. Clara realized that the tape and Sophia's power were no longer limited to their family. If left unchecked, it could spread across the entire city. She began teaching Jacob how to use his psychic abilities so they could control Sophia's energy. Jacob was no longer just an observer, he had become an active participant in the fight. One night, Clara sensed that Sophia's ghost was targeting Jacob directly rather than simply haunting the house. Jacob suddenly screamed, "Mom! She's coming for me!" Clara immediately reached out and tried to focus his energy through herself, but the ghost was too strong and fast. The next day, Clara placed symbolic marks on the windows and doors of the old Hawthorne house to confuse Sophia's power and trap her. Jacob also created a protective mental barrier between the tape and the ghost. However, Sophia's power was no longer limited to her ghost. The energy tied to the tape began affecting electronic devices. Computers, TVs, and smartphones turned on by themselves. From the phone, the same whisper echoed, 7 days. Clara and Jacob realized they couldn't rely on traps and protective barriers alone. They needed a way to control Sophia's psychic energy directly. Jacob used his hidden abilities to sense the tape's energy and told Clara that if they connected directly to her consciousness, they could limit the ghost's power. That night, Clara and Jacob placed the tape in a secure location. Jacob began mentally linking with Sophia. At first, the ghost resisted, screaming and threatening them, but gradually her energy became contained within the tape. By morning, the house was quiet. The tape was secure, and Sophia's ghost was nearly inactive. Clara told Jacob, "We have some relief now, but we must remain alert. One mistake, and this can spread again." Jacob quietly asked, "Mom, are we safe now?" Clara only nodded. She understood that sometimes the fight wasn't about defeating evil, it was just about staying alive. But both knew that Sophia's power had not been destroyed. It was only under controlled containment. And that curse could awaken again at any moment. And Sophia's ghost kept reactivating, but Jacob's mental abilities and Clara's courage kept them in control each time. One night, Clara realized that Sophia's power was no longer limited to fear and mental torment. She had begun affecting the physical world. Lights flickered, water dripped uncontrollably, and strange shadows roamed the house. Jacob said, "Mom, this is the final fight. We have to stop her once and for all." Clara prepared a final trap to contain the tape and Sophia's ghost. She instructed Jacob to focus all his mental energy. Jacob sensed the tape's energy and began channeling Sophia's power into it. Sophia unleashed her full rage, throwing objects, screaming, and stirring water and wind into a terrifying storm within the room. But Jacob did not falter. He concentrated fully, channeling all his energy to control her power. Clara carefully placed the tape into the trap and shouted, "Now, Jacob. Pull her in." With all his strength, Jacob drew Sophia's energy into the tape. A powerful shock surged through the room, and suddenly both the ghost and her energy were sealed within. The house fell silent. Morning came. The house was calm and peaceful. The tape was completely deactivated, and Sophia's ghost would never escape again. Jacob and Clara knew that they had finally ended the curse for good. Clara hid the tape in a strong, secure place and wrote a warning, "Do not open under any circumstances." They vowed that it would never fall into anyone else's hands. Clara hugged Jacob tightly and said, "We're safe now, son. The fear is over. This fight is our victory." Jacob smiled and said, "Yes, Mom, now both we and the city are safe." And with that, the years of terrifying events and the curse were finally over. Clara and Jacob realized that true power often comes from mental strength and courage. And they had proven it.
Dear viewers, we're doing our best to bring you the most engaging and high-quality story videos. Your feedback matters a lot to us. Let us know what you thought about this story and its parts. If you have any suggestions or ideas, don't hesitate to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe our channel, give a like and share it with others who love suspense and thrill. And most importantly, turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next chilling tale. Your support means everything.